right here on Rwanda Television. Thank you so much for making time and for joining us. It is a show that is interactive. All you need to do is always add the hashtag InFocusRW. We'll definitely be able to read or sample your thoughts throughout the program. My name, as always, is Eugene Anangwe. Now, tonight on the program, we're talking about various topical issues that have been hot topics throughout this week. Of course, looking ahead as well on the new month that we just started right here. What we know already is that voting did start for the parliamentary elections for those in the diaspora. These are the images from some of the polling stations outside of Rwanda. Of course, we have one right here from President Paul Kagame, who actually did vote together with the First Lady of Rwanda when he was in China. He did actually cast his ballot right there. That's the image of the First Lady also doing that. Of course, there was this opportunity for those young Rwandans who are living out there. Of course, this is also in Geneva. The voting did take place as well. We can see right there for Rwandans living in Switzerland also did take part in the voting exercise. These are some of the images right there. These ones are Rwandans living in Angola, as you can see. Plus, of course, there is a lot going on right there in that end. And back here at home, Rwandans will be voting. Those of voting age or those who are eligible to vote will be taking place or taking part in the voting. This is Edwin Musoni, who had actually posted this tweet on the preparations for where he will be voting tomorrow. He says, I am a registered voter and I vote from Gatare Cell of Niboye sector in Kichichiro district. This is how organized we are. There you have it. So you can definitely be able to share your tweets. If it is images on that particular vote, we'll be taking some time to talk about it, of course, with the focus looking at the role and the voice of civil society in such major activities or events right here in Rwanda. Of course, also we'll be spending some time to talk about this activity or this event that is taking place in China. Actually, Africa has landed in China. We'll be asking ourselves why and what exactly will be going on right there. What are the expectations? We'll be talking about that. These are just some of the images as the leaders arrive there. That is President Paul Kagame, who's also the chair of the African Union, right there being received. Of course, a lot has been happening. Most presidents of African states, that is President Uhuru Kenyatta of Kenya, of course, arriving in Beijing, China. We'll be taking a look at the economic impact, if any, on the China-Africa relations. That is definitely what we'll be looking at right here. All you need to do is already start sharing your thoughts and add the hashtag InFocusRW. It's that simple. And of course, we'll be able to hear from our panelists on this particular issue. Let me just quickly introduce them right here on the program. We have none other than Josephine Uwamaria, who's actually the country director of Action Aid Rwanda. Thank you so much for joining us on the program once again.
Thank you.
Asante sana. Also with us is Gonzaga Muganwa, who is actually with the Rwanda Journalists Association. He's also a political commentator. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
And also Juliet Karitanyi makes a comeback on the program. She's actually a communications and public relations specialist. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you.
And Dr. Lonzen Ruggira is here, the political analyst. He's also on lonzenruggira.rwa. Thank you so much for joining us, Lonzen.
Thank you, Anand.
And also we have a guest on Skype who's actually with us. Steve Biko is also joining us on Skype from Nairobi, Kenya. If we can actually have him, or if we do have him, he can also be able to be welcomed right here on the program. Steve Biko is with us. He'll be joining us to just share his insights on the topic of discussion today. Right, so let's just kickstart this conversation. I want us also to loosen up a bit. You know, this is in focus. We also, you know, have fun while at it. Mama Josephine, I want to start with you. First of all, Africa is sort of, you know, heading China as far as, you know, relations are concerned. We have our leaders there for FOCAC, you know, and of course, there is a lot of expectation. Some people have said this is the way to go, perfect model of South-to-South cooperation. But I want to read your thoughts as a civil society organization. You know, much as we have political analysts who have also been giving political analysis on this, where do you stand as far as your advice or your views and thoughts are as far as Rwanda and entire Africa is concerned when it comes to their relations with China?
Oh, thank you. Certainly, my thoughts around the relations between Africa and China, for me, I look at it from three perspectives.
Right.
The first one is, what do they bring?
What do they bring?
What do they bring? What interests do they actually have as far as the Africans are concerned?
Right.
Is it their own interests or the interests of Africans?
What sort of answers do you give yourself when you ask yourself those questions?
One major answer I give myself is it's bilateral, but when it comes to trade, for me, I look at that as, yes, the power to actually invest, but it should be a relationship. It should be a partnership.
It should be a partnership.
It should be a partnership,
Right.
because we have resources in Africa, and they shouldn't just be drawn to develop China. They should be drawn to develop both China
So it should be a
and
win-win
Africa.
situation.
Yes, it should be a win-win situation,
Right. Gonzaga, what runs in your mind?
particularly for the citizens.
Particularly for the citizens.
Yeah.
Thank you for highlighting that. Gonzaga, your thoughts?
Number one, it's a shame that African leaders are lining up in Beijing.
It's a shame.
Absolutely.
Why?
I mean, if one country can summon the rest of Africa, 50 countries and so, because it shows it's not China's problem, it's our problem as Africans. Number one, we have very many countries, 50 plus of them. It shows we are too small to play a role in the emerging global order, because you can see power is shifting. It's becoming a multipolar world. It's no longer the United States as the dominant power. China is rising up. But what is Africa's role? It seems we are going to remain where we are being exploited.
But what makes you say that? Because I think the African presidents or leaders who are representing us right there, they have not just gone there to, go with bowls.
The good thing it is, unlike the West, which used to be more about begging, this is more about trade. But still, it's an unbalanced trade. One of the points they're talking about is the deficit. But also, we are not taking over China's role. You see, China's economy is transitioning from manufacturing, low-cost labor manufacturing, to the high-level manufacturing. That means their citizens are becoming high-income consumers.
Right.
Africa is not positioning to supply them goods. We are still supplying raw materials.
Raw materials.
Our manufacturing has failed takeoff for the last 2 decades. It has stagnated.
Right.
That means we are still in that relationship. Even when they come here to construct, to do things, they bring their own laborers. That means there's no transfer of technology. China developed because it was able to acquire technology from the West. They sent so many people there. They created so many jobs. In this relationship, are we getting people getting jobs?
Right.
So,
we will dig a bit deeper into that. Juliet, I want to read your thoughts as well. Do you also feel that it's a shame that our African leaders are in China right now? Do you also look at it from that perspective, being summoned by one country and everybody just runs there? Is this how you also look at it?
No, I have a different view about it. Because if you see the partnership between Africa and the former colonies, it used to be, I would say maybe 80%, they gain 80%, we gain 20%. But now with China is a bit different. They give us, I think it's about 50-50, just because we are not yet there. But for me, I think it's a 50-50.
You look at it as a 50-50.
Comparing to the former partnerships that we've
Former
done before.
partnerships in this is a synonym for the Western nations.
Yes, and this time is for Africa to shine, because right now the tensions in the West give us a chance now to work with China. It's like we are the darling of the world right now. They are
the darling of the world.
Yes.
I'm going to take on that. Dr. Lonze, Germany's Angela Merkel was in a 3-nation West Africa trip that was to Ghana, Senegal, and Nigeria. UK Prime Minister Theresa May was just ending, her trip to South Africa, Nigeria, and Kenya. Francis Macron and Ines Narendra Modi and China's Xi Jinping were all in Africa just a few weeks ago. The question here is, and of course today we have our African leaders in China, all of them calling Africa to the table, either to discuss, negotiate on a win-win or not. I will be able to hear your thoughts on that. But the smell of the coffee here, is it that smell that makes you feel disgusted, or is this the aroma that makes you want to take that coffee? Is it a good thing or not?
Well, if you take the dinner table to your bedroom, the extent to which you have control over that meal is very limited. So this is what's happening. The dinner table has been taken to the Chinese room. Now, the issue here is that we may be darlings of these forces, but in an abusive relationship, they are not darlings. Yeah. So if we have been abused by the West over the last, if you want to be, you can say 50, 60 years, but really it's been 500 years, 700 years. But if you want to say that they've been abusing us in that relationship, exploiting us, the Chinese are doing the same, but in a different way. The Chinese have been able to learn from the mistakes of the West, and they're able to approach Africa in a way that we think that we are in a relationship that's not abusive, but it really is when you look fundamentally. Now, unfortunately, we are so insecure that we need a relationship. We can't be not in a relationship.
Right.
Yeah. So we have been abused so much that we believe that being in a relationship is essential to our existence. And so we open ourselves.
We believe that we can't do on our own.
Yeah, we open up ourselves to abuse. So we are unable to assert our values in a meaningful relationship. So for a long time, we are not going to be in a meaningful relationship for a while because we have some psychological damage that invites us into abusive relations. Now, when you see Macron, Theresa May, Merkel coming to Africa, they are seeing that the Americans are leaving a void, and this void is being filled by the Chinese. So they don't want the Chinese to fill that void. So they are retracing their steps, and they are trying to come back into Africa into a less abusive relationship than previous times, but still abusive. So they are actually modeling on the Chinese now. If you see that the Americans last week, Trump, there's this order that came out that they're going to release more resources into infrastructure at the global funding infrastructure at the global level. Most of that is coming to Africa. And why are they funding infrastructure? Because the Chinese are funding infrastructure. So they're trying to cool down on their violence.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the point where I bring in Steve Biko. If Steve Biko, I hope you're with us. Have you been following what, I'm sure you have, definitely following what our panelists right here have been actually saying. And I want to read your thoughts, because you two have not been, we've not had kind words for China, especially when it comes to its relations with Africa, and particularly in Kenya, where you are, a country which has actually taken in 70% of bilateral debt is actually owed to China. I want to read your thoughts as well, as African leaders meet in China for FOCAC 2018. What's on your mind when you see this?
First and foremost, it's very sad that all our leaders can actually gather in Beijing as if we are beggars, because at the end of the day, China has three things, and they're very keen on actually being able to get them. One is they're looking for market for their products. Africa, in the next 5 years, Africa is going to be one of the biggest places whereby any brand or any country that has any products is actually going to be able to sell. Two, China is actually exporting its worst because they're looking for space and places where they can have their population resettled. For example, in Kenya, we have a lot of prisoners working on key projects here. So China is looking for places where they can go to have some of their bad sons and daughters. They're looking for raw materials for their products, especially in manufacturing and processing. So we, at the end of the day, find a lot of good business partners. They are actually out to use the relationship that we have. And it's unfortunate Africans with the dignity or the integrity to be proud of the little we have and say, no, enough is enough. We can be able to do what we need to do on our own.
Steve, one of our panelists right here, Dr. Lonzen, had actually mentioned that African countries have sort of been, they're moving from an abusive relationship, and so it has been difficult for them to actually, settle in any other new relationship. Actually, they seem to think that they must be in a relationship in the first place. How then can Africa stand on its own? Is it possible, or is it inevitable for us to not seek these kind of partnerships that you seem to say are abusive?
It's very possible for us to stand on our own, and I don't think we've been in any abusive relationship. The issue is our leadership. the integrity of our leadership is actually very wanting. One, if we can be able to change the leadership across the board, from South Africa all the way to Egypt, all the way to Mali, then we can be able to do something about being able to steer Africa in the right direction. We need leadership that will actually be able to focus on the people. We need leadership that will have policies that will focus on production, enhancing agro-processing, and being able to take care of the youth. The youth are the future of this continent. And for me, I believe we're doing a lot of key projects that will not really materialize to anything. We need to have projects that will actually be able to elevate our core cottage industries, from our agro-processing to agriculture. I mean, we export coffee. For us to import it in refined form at a higher price. Kenya, for example, is exporting oil. We're exporting raw materials. We are one of the biggest exporters of avocado in its raw form. We end up actually importing it in refined, value-added products. This is something that we can actually be able to do. Sort out the leadership. Key issue is actually in production and processing. And China and America and Britain and India know that we are not able to produce. So they're actually able to corrupt our leadership to be able to give up our key raw materials. And this is where the problem is. And this is the abusive relationship that the professor is actually talking about is between us and our leaders, not between us and our other development partners, for example. China doesn't really care about human rights or accountability. I'll give you a very good example. We've been crying in Kenya to be able to see the documentation of the key projects that China has actually been doing. And despite us having a public access to information law, none of this is actually possible. So I don't think the issue is us. We need to change the relationship we have with our leadership first, because I believe we can be able to change that. Then we can be able to have better people to go on the table and be able to be able to negotiate what is best for us. Because for me, I believe what is best for Africa, from Rwanda to Botswana to South Africa, is leadership that will actually focus on creating jobs for its young population. Leadership that will be able to focus on manufacturing and agro-processing.
Thank you, Steve. Stay with us. We still want to be with you here on this particular conversation. I want to read your thoughts as well, because he really raises key issues. He counters Dr. Lawson's point and says the abusiveness has not been between us as Africa and our partners, as far as international donors are concerned or partners are concerned, but it has been amongst ourselves as Africans. Key point, he says, is leadership. If we have proper leadership, then we can be able to work and live and survive on our own as a continent. Do you agree?
I totally agree, because using Rwanda example, focusing on even made in Rwanda is one step to actually addressing the issues of dependency on the West. So when the leadership is focused, has that interest in the country or in the state, other than looking at support from the West and the external states, is possible.
It is possible.
It's possible.
Right. But he also raises the fact that most of these deals that China actually has with African states are often secretive, in quotes. This is according to him, that it is not easy to actually have them in public. And so that raises concerns as to what is contained in those agreements. What have we given out as African countries that in the end, maybe years later, we could be regretting? How can the civil society come in here as far as ensuring that the public knows what is contained in these agreements that are signed by our leaders in China?
Certainly, what we actually do is first sensitizing and building the capacity of the citizens to hold their leaders to account. Secondly, it's advocating for transparency and accountability, particularly when such negotiations are being done.
Right.
Other than doing it behind doors, let it be done publicly, so that what the negotiations are and the benefits to the citizens are actually openly discussed, so that at the end of the day, it's not the negotiators that are actually going to benefit. Right. Especially where we've seen some, in some countries, where some contracts or some MOUs have not actually even been put to the public in order to know.
Right.
And it is the responsibility of the negotiators to be accountable to the citizens.
On what they've
because they are
agreed.
actually negotiating
On behalf
of the citizens.
Right.
And that is what the topmost leadership should be doing to ensure that the negotiators are actually accountable.
Right. Okay. Gonzaga, I'm going to ask you this also with your hat as a journalist. Do you think the future generation, will really hold us to account and actually say that you failed us as journalists to actually dig deep and expose the things that were going on as far as our leaders and their partners were actually signing off as far as their countries are concerned? Do you think,
you see,
how will history judge us?
Yeah, definitely history will be harsh. That means going forward if we don't improve. Now we're doing our work. But you see, these deals are very hard to get. Even deals with the West, look at if you follow in Uganda, the oil deals with Total and so on, they're still secretive. Even here, the Rwanda Arsenal deal is secretive. So that one in business, it is expected. In some because of competition and other factors. Because if as a sales type may want to negotiate these things publicly, no deal may ever happen because so many interests are involved. But also there are others who want sabotage. I don't think the Americans will be glad for Kenya to sign a big deal with China. But it's very, very important that the leaders are actually presenting, and they are not shortchanged. We know that it has been said many times that Chinese companies actually offer bribes. It has been one of it's an allegation, but it's widespread. So it is very important that beyond having good leaders, they must have a strategic vision. What vision are they following? Are African leaders in China negotiating collectively, or each country is negotiating its own deals with China? I think each country is cutting its own deals. Yeah? There is no particular vision that you say. There could be a common ground. They say, okay, invest in Africa, bring big construction companies, but let's agree as Africans, no Chinese laborers. We have enough youth in Africa. Our leaders negotiate that collectively so that no one gets the deals, because if you don't negotiate collectively, it's not possible. The other one will go behind your back and get all the
How possible is that? How possible is that, Juliet? I want to read your mind as well from a PR perspective. First of all, looking at the nature of these deals and the communication that comes out. All this time we've been seeing a lot of communication as to how the media is actually being manipulated to actually rein in or push that narrative that China is actually pushing up a neo-colonial direction as far as its partnership with Africa is concerned. That whatever it is doing, it is actually baiting Africans to actually take in the amount of debt that they're actually taking in. But in the end, there's that aspect of the communication that is actually coming out, both from the Chinese media and those who are actually behind these deals. How then can the media here in Rwanda, for example, and Africa as a nation, come out and play its role in actually exposing the good, the bad, and the evil, or the good, and the good in these deals? How can we do that? Is it even possible from a PR perspective, communication perspective?
Okay, I think the work for the journalists and whoever is delivering information needs to deliver an information that is accurate. And most of the time, we don't really get the full information or knowing the truth behind all those stories. And what you get, either from so many media houses, you get it's all about propaganda, it's all about PR, and this stops the public or the citizen to really know what is going on, what am I losing? Because yes, the deals might be good, but what is Africa losing? Because sometimes a citizen from the village will not even know what they're losing, but their kids are going to pay the debt that our leaders are taking today. So we need more information about what's happening, because today if you go on internet, you Google about this forum, the stories in Rwanda, maybe you might not find all the details. So it's the work of the journalists and the work of our leaders to really deliver what is really going on. Because some of the deals might be secretive, but at least let us know what are we sacrificing, because maybe in 50 years to come, our children are going to ask us, are going to ask us, why did you do this? That is going to affect their lives for so many times, for so many years.
Right. Nonsen, I want to ask you this because Mama Josephine did allude to the fact that they actually train and work on capacity building. And of course, anytime I hear that word, I always say that joke that someone said, give me the building, keep the capacity. The capacity of our journalists today, when you read, even when President Xi was here in Rwanda, for example, and every news story that has been around these high-profile visits, and now this FOCAC 2018, when you read our media, do you see a sense of going the extra mile to actually dig deeper and offer analysis that would actually help into what Juliet has alluded to that we need to do as journalists? Do you see that in yourself?
Well, usually I'm one of those people who are hard on our journalists, but I think sometimes we expect too much. We are trying to sow where we did not reap.
Sow where we did not reap?
Yeah, yes, to reap where not sow. Yeah, but it is very important that it is upside down.
Right. What's the point?
Yeah, the point is that even in banking, it is illegal to provide a loan to an illegitimate entity. Now, when you talk about these loans, you know, when I was in my previous life as a social justice activist, we used to go to the White House, and we'd have placards, and we talk about arduous date, no to arduous date, and we are decampaigning the loans that Africans through the Mobutu days and so on had gotten from the West. And actually, as a result, some of them were forgiven. But as soon as the debts were forgiven, they borrowed even more than was there, and they could not finance them. The question becomes, of what purpose are these loans being sought? When you look at the nature of some of these governments, they should not be in the business of getting these loans, because they go in the pockets of a few individuals. And as a result, these become arduous debts that the future generation shouldn't be held accountable for. And when we talk about civil society's role in this regard should be ensuring that such debts, such agreements don't take place. In fact, that when we talk about journalism and civil society, this is where they're supposed to show. And making sure that those entities that are entering into these agreements, they're getting an agreement with an illegitimate entity.
Right.
Now, if we look, we talked about the quality of leadership. If we look at the quality of leadership and we ask ourselves the question, which of these leaders are actually entering into agreements for the interests of the ordinary person? There are very few. Now, the issue about the citizen's role, really, in Africa today, we are still in a situation where we do not have citizens, as the term is. We have subjects. So we are yet to really transform subjects.
Are you a subject? Because there's a subject.
Let me make my point before you talk about that. Yeah. So until we're able to transform the subjects into citizens, then the ability of the citizens to hold the leadership and to change the leadership into the kind of leadership that is appropriate for that citizenry, we're still very far from that.
Right.
So when you talk about the citizenry, the society, the journalists, talk about the civil society, we're all part of that. We come from that society. So now the expectations of our roles have to be in line with the reality in which we find ourselves. And the question becomes, when we say we are citizens, what are we really talking about?
What are we really talking about? Steve Biko, I mean, I want to come back to you again on this, because you said leadership is one of the key issues that is actually paramount in ensuring that Africa actually stands on its feet and actually does what it has to do, and you said it is very possible. Now, we're talking about the issue of putting our leaders to account as far as the deals they sign on our behalf is concerned. Are our hands tied, or who is actually supposed to do this? Because you said that these deals are mostly secretive, mostly not even open to public participation. So how then do we actually do this? What is your advice on this?
One, I don't think our hands are tied because if the Chinese and the US and the UK people can see the potential we have, then we as the owners of this continent need to realize our potential. So for me, I think it's supposed to be government for the people, for the sake of the people, and for the empowerment of the people. We elect leaders to represent our interests. And I believe that the moment these leaders turn our interests into their own personal interests, then our avenues are still open. One, like for example, what's been happening in Uganda. When you look at the issue of the young people, the millennials, for example, anyone who's below 40, we are tired. We are tired of bad leadership. We are tired of begging for survival. The issue that we need to do is that we have the option of going to the streets. We have social media that can help us raise our voice. And if our leaders cannot be able to listen to what we're telling them via social media, then the other option is to go to the streets. Look at South Africa. Look at what Julius Malema has actually been able to achieve in terms of being able to push out Zuma and bring in Cyril Ramaphosa. Look at what's happening in Uganda. And I believe what's happening in Uganda can actually usher in a new environment for political tolerance and for the young people to have a say across the Eastern and Central Africa. Because at the end of the day, we have the markets. We have the natural resources. We have the human resources to actually be able to do what. We don't need to go to China. We can actually be able to do a lot of this. We have the people who can be able to develop the industries we need, the processing machines we need. We can be able to demand better from the civil society. I like what's happening in Rwanda. Unfortunately for us in Kenya, I don't know what happened to our civil society. So we are going through a lot. Like for example, in Kenya right now, we have a problem of fuel. I think we're the third highest country in Africa to charge the highest fee per liter of petrol. But no one is actually doing anything about it. We are afraid to actually stand up and go to the streets. But I believe a time is coming when the young people, the millennials, are actually going to say enough is enough. And I think for true governance and true prosperity to actually be able to happen, we, the people, the citizens, need to be aware of our rights. We need to understand what it means to hold our leaders accountable, because we are not holding our leaders accountable. In Kenya, for example, when Amia CS, who's been appointed by the president, whom we elected the president, cannot adhere to the summons of parliament. What are we coming to? What is the essence of democracy if it doesn't really work? It means we have to go to the streets at the end of the day. And that is the only option there. And that's the only language young people are going to understand, because we don't have jobs. Our education system doesn't really correlate to what's happening on the labor market. And at the end of the day, we are eating a lot of important things from China. What about our farmers? What about our entrepreneurs? What are we going to do with this?
Loud and clear. And I want to hear from you, Mama Josephine, because in the end, he says that the millennials are actually now turning to social media as a way or as a tool to actually express their voice, to reclaim what they feel is actually being taken away from them. You're from a different generation, but I'm really proud that you're actually on social media. Do you think this is the way to go? That is the way to go, you think? For us as young people to actually start voicing our concerns when the other options are out? Do you think this is the way to go?
I certainly consider it as a very good option. Mm-hmm. If other doors are closed, then that is an opening. Mm-hmm. And I certainly feel the youth should be as active and as engaging on social media as much as possible. Mm-hmm. Because if in some instances they are unable to voice their issues out, then let them use the alternative that will actually enable them have their issues voiced out, reaching as many people as possible, and including those that they are targeting. But I would also say, let the other avenues be completely open, right, for them to engage. Why should there be a closure? They have a right to engage, have a right to information, have a right to influence, have a right to advocate. Right. So all those avenues should be open.
They should be open.
But the social media should also be promoted.
Should be promoted.
Yeah.
Gonzaga, in Rwanda here, we're lucky we have an access to information bill. Of course, also Steve Biko alluded to the fact that marches in Kenya, they have almost a similar thing, but it's actually not really working to getting information as far as major deals and major government programs and actions are concerned. Here in Rwanda, I want to hear your thoughts as far as journalists are concerned as well, because we still need to go around that circle. How many of our journalists today, for example, have actually invoked or actually asked for that bill or that law to actually be invoked for them to actually get access to information in line with what we're talking about today as far as our leaders and their partners are concerned, or we are just here to write the headlines?
Very few, I would admit, it's one of our biggest concerns presently. Since the law was enacted 5 years ago, it has been, most people confuse getting the usual information from public relations officers and so on as if it's using the access to information law. But in reality, getting it for investigative journalists, for being able to analyze big projects, what affects the citizens, it is being grossly underused. But also, it doesn't mean that using it will force, because there are ministerial orders which provide for, you can't access everything, which provide for not allowing certain contracts. If your contract specifically states that this must not be public,
right,
that means illegally you can't do very much unless you go to court and you prove that there is a serious public interest in it, so that the government is forced to release it. But I totally agree. Us as journalists, we need to do much more. Yeah, there was another element I want to talk about on leadership, because it matters so much. Look at the best way for Africa to negotiate it through integration. It was very good that the leaders are signing the free trade agreement, but there's also elements of regional sabotage. Look at the sugar crisis that is in the region. If corrupt cartels can get cheap sugar from Brazil and pour it in Kenya, it goes to Tanzania, it affects, it is killing local manufacturers in the sector. The leadership is not acting sufficiently. Look at Rwanda and Burundi. I saw a story last week that there is zero trade between Rwanda and Burundi. Imagine, these are countries which are literally brothers and sisters. We are almost the same band, speak the same language. But because of the regional leadership challenge. So how will you go to Beijing and negotiate and get a fair deal if there is zero trade between Rwanda and Burundi?
So there's no way they can negotiate as a bloc. Not possible. Julian, the way to go as far as access to information, getting this information or reported deals that are being signed from a communication PR perspective, he alluded to the fact that social media protest is actually the way to go for young people. Do you agree?
50-50, because the internet penetration itself in Africa is not that big. So this means that when it comes back to social media, it's also small. So how many are you telling? How many are you attending with that information? They say it's still low. And then we have the millennials think that if something is sorted on social media, now it's sorted in the society. No, it needs to come back to the parliament. It needs to go through process, because social media is just a way of communication. But there are things that need to be done in parliament. There are things that need to be done in the government.
But they're saying free Bobby Wine. Bobby Wine is now free. They think, or they believe that it actually worked because of that pressure from social media.
I remember one time there was a journalist who was asking Barack Obama how much does going striking or doing those kind of hashtag, how much does it affect to a decision, but it comes to a very low percentage. So we need to know that as well. It's good, yes, it's really nice, because that's where we express ourselves, but we also need to know that it's not that big. Yes.
It's not that big. Dr. Lonzen, as you say that, I want to go to our social media platform. Take a look at our hashtag InFocusRW, what they're saying. I want to read your thoughts as well on the same question that I've just asked. Is it the way to go? Social media pressure to actually push our leadership to tell us what they are signing on our behalf when we cannot be able to get that. Is this the way to go?
Social media is tied to the language of rights.
Right.
But we are very far from enforcing rights. At this point, yes, at best, it is of cathartic value. It's catharsis. So you feel good.
I didn't carry my dictionary.
Yes. So you feel good, you feel like, it's like when you have problems and you go to the counselor,
right,
and you talk to them, you tell them your problems, and you leave feeling better. At best, this is where we are. When you look at countries like Kenya, where they have the most effective organized social media youth, the extent to which they are able to turn it into a movement to prevent the rise of corrupt forces into their governance systems is minimal or absent. So it gives you a very good indication of what actual value you can get from social media. Is it able to scare some politicians who are already scared anyways? Yes. but for a political entity with conviction, it is not going to be really affected by social media. And the issue of rights, I think, is very important. When we talk about rights and the ability to enforce rights, it is linked to what I began saying, the conception of who we are in the face of the state. Are we people with rights, who are citizens, who are people who are subjects, who are to be given access to certain things that the state deems is should be access to? So this language of rights, we are very far from it, and the more we are honest about it, and the extent to which it can be a vehicle for social change, we are in a better situation than to delude ourselves that the youth can really claim their rights. We are very far from that.
We are very far from that. Let's take a look at what is actually going on social media already. Quizzer Samuel, he says that we could have a higher ground with our investors, that is China, USA, EU countries, if one, we African states unity in the making of trade deals. I think it means that we need to actually be unified as an African continent in the deals that we make as far as trade is concerned. Two, question our leaders and their incentives in some of the deals that they make. Number three, looking for internal solutions for our problems. This is exactly what he says. Let's take a look at another one here from Dolapo Aina, who was actually a friend of In Focus. He actually says, if deals negotiated between African leaders and Western leaders or Asian leaders are kept secretive from the eyes of their citizens and media, there is no gainsaying that such deals, if scrutinized by the public, loopholes would be found. Do you agree? Do you agree that we would find any loopholes if these deals are secretives?
Will go, and once the money comes, you follow up to see whether it went where it said it would go.
Right.
But if you don't know any of that information, you can't verify. So then it takes us to our rights.
Right. Okay. Rugamba here says that it is not enough for African governments to exploit Chinese or other foreign companies. They must also ensure that foreign companies' participation forms part of a development strategy that accounts for the real cost of investments and their long-term impact. Anyone wants to react to that? It's straightforward, right? Straightforward. Let's take another one here. I personally think getting together as Africans and speaking by one voice has to be the first step. We need to do that. But do you think it's easy? Can we do that?
No, it's not easy, but we've started this African Continental Free Zone.
Right.
And so
and Agenda 2063.
No, the issue is lack of organization. So whatever vehicle you use to organize Africans, you are increasing their voice and their ability to negotiate in ways that they're not abusive.
Right. Okay, let's continue. Secondly, we don't have to behave like beggars, but like partners with anyone in the so-called superpowers. We still need them, but they now need us more.
But, but you need the leverage.
You need the
You
leverage.
have to put something on the table and defend it to become a partner. You just say, I'm a partner when somebody's on top of you.
When they're already on top of you. Let's hear from Biko. I mean, just your quick thoughts, because I want to let you free right now. I know it's in Kenya. It's now slightly too late. Oh, he's already actually gone. Thank you so much, Biko, for actually being with us right there. Right, we're going to take a very quick break. When we come back, we'll just sample a bit of the issue of the parliamentary elections and looking ahead as far as the voice of civil society is concerned on this. Let's take this very quick break. Keep tweeting #InFocusRW. We'll be back in a while. Really, Imabo? That was so short. We're actually back, of course. We're still right here just sampling some of the hot topics of the week right here on In Focus. My name, as always, is Eugene Anangwe. In case you just forgot, we have Maria Josephine, who's actually the country director of Action Aid Rwanda. We also have Gonzaga Mugano, who's actually with the Rwanda Association of Journalists, and also Juliet Karitanyi, a specialist in PR and communication, and Dr. Lonzo Rugira is also here with us. I want to throw this very quickly because we already are at 47 minutes after the top of the hour. Mama Josephine, very quickly, Already we are voting in the diaspora. It's done. Voting has actually happened. Tomorrow, early morning, we have locals here in Rwanda who will be casting their ballot to elect their parliamentarians. The question that I have right here is the voice of civil society on what needs to form the agenda of these politicians and the political parties when they're campaigning, when they get to parliament. Seems to be very minimal. We don't really hear how civil society is influencing what they're saying or what they plan to do. Defend yourself now.
Compared to what goes out in the media, I can say yes.
Yes.
But not, it isn't so, because we are actually, as I mentioned earlier, we are with the citizens in civic education.
Right.
In engaging with them, ensuring that they actually vote for those who will address their issues.
So we are the ones who are not covering or saying this conversation, yes. But you're doing it.
Yes, we are doing it.
Gonzaga, you're from the Journalists Association. Why are we not covering what civil society is doing? Why are we making them look bad that they're not saying anything, they're not doing anything?
The PR person should how to make it more dramatic.
Right.
Yeah. You see, when it's as usual, it doesn't make headlines, so it does not get on the radio or TV. But I understand that the civil society actually follows the elections closely. Right. There are some organizations who have observer missions. They have been moving around the country, and they usually give reports at the end of the day. And from my experience, I've shown the pedigree, they influence future legislation concerning elections and so on. Where I have a problem is actually when the parliament is constituted and goes to registrate, the extent to which civil society follows the legislative process. Rwanda's parliament is one of the most active. Actually, they legislate a lot. By the end of a 5-year term, they have considered hundreds of bills and too long. There are so many, and I think one of the reasons there are very many is because most laws come back to parliament quickly. That means they are not scrutinized enough. Civil society is absent, media is absent, so MPs sit on it. Somebody has sat someone written a bill, no much consultation. In practice, you find there are gaps, so it goes back to parliament. I think if almost every law, if there was a civil society organization concerning that sector, writes in position paper, it helps informs the parliamentarians. They would make more durable laws that reflect society, that have divergent views, so that you don't have every sector law going to parliament every 3
going
4 years.
back 3-4 years.
I think that's why they should have much more presence. Yeah.
Right, the presence. He alluded to the fact that PR person should actually take this. I want to take your take on the same question. On the voice of civil society, when it comes to forming, the conversations, shaping the conversations that prospective parliamentarians will be making ahead of the elections and even after they are voted. Forming the kind of dialogue, the conversations that should be going on. A lot is being seen as this has been left to, the political parties and the politicians who are vying. They're the ones who decide what will be in their manifesto, what will not be in their manifesto. So where is the civil society? That's the question. Okay. You're looking at her and winking, so that you can be nice.
No, it's not about that.
Right.
But in this, I would like to see them being more active with the bringing like a citizen now, bringing more of our problems to the parliament, and then following up with the results, because they are standing for us, for the citizen. So they should work more on our behalf. And then when they report, and then we want to see change. Because, for example, I'm so passionate about this problem of pregnancy in teenagers. It's been there for years. What have they been doing? Because I saw in the morning an article, there is an MP, a woman MP, who said that she's going to work on that. Now, how?
How?
We are all concerned about that.
So the civil society should come up and now put pressure.
Yes,
on the acting and the results.
Because most of the time it's all about election, and after election we don't hear from them. And after 5 years there is another election for the MPs, but what are they doing?
Right.
Yes.
Dr. Lanzan, we've had the question of citizen outreach, that our MPs are not going out on the floor, on the ground to do anything. Do you think the problems goes back to the civil society organizations that are not pushing them to work as they're supposed to work?
Can I call it subject outreach?
Subject, not citizen.
And that is the problem.
Right.
The content of citizenship is filled by civil society. When they're absent, the content becomes absent. That's why the subject comes in. Now, when you look across the board, she just talked about the biggest criticism of Parliament is that it is detached from the citizen or subject. From the grassroots, it is detached. Now, the fact, actually it's not just Parliament. All leadership is detached from the grassroots. And we're talking about mayors. You know, in the retreat, you've heard how the president was being tough, asking them, why don't you go to the citizens? So whether it's civil society, whether it's media, whether it's all across the board, levels of leadership are refusing to go to the citizens.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm using that word very lightly for historical reasons and so forth. Now, the civil society, the opposition, political opposition, all these people go to the rural areas during election time. And they go there for those 2 weeks or so.
After
And
that,
they don't create relationships, lasting relationships with the people. And it is through lasting relationships that you are able to know the aspirations of the people, and you help articulate their aspirations on their behalf.
Right.
So when you talk about weakness of political parties in this country, when you talk about weakness of civil society, when you talk about weakness of media, when you talk about all the oversight roles being weak, it is about this. So the desire to be in Kigali, I think it is the lights. You know, but they've taken the light to the villages. People should go, you know. So until that is corrected, we are going to have this problem.
right,
Yeah.
we're going to have this problem. We have only 1 minute to go.
wanted to add.
Yes, add it.
I just
really quick.
wanted to add,
Yes.
certainly now that the fourth parliament is actually going to be voted in tomorrow, like it was done in the diaspora, the incoming parliamentarians,
What's your commitment?
the commitment of the civil society is actually being close to them and holding them to account,
Right.
so that they actually are closer to the citizens, yes, and be able to enact laws based on the issues they have actually gotten from the citizens. So I want to agree with Ronzen about the subject. Let them change from
Subjects to citizens.
subject to citizens,
Right.
so that they engage the citizens influence them, and also hold them to account.
Okay, perfect. Very quickly, Gonzaga, really quick, because they're already shouting in my ears that we need to go.
Yeah, the good thing or something positive is that because most political parties have changed their list, so there may be very many new faces. I don't know the result yet, but by looking at the candidates across the different political parties, there may be a lot of new faces, so maybe it means that at least the political parties are responsive enough to know that they need to give
to freshen
other
up.
people
Right.
an opportunity.
Perfect. Real quick, Julia.
I
Just
would-
closing remark.
I would like to say that voting the MPs is not about the MPs themselves. It's about them representing us in Parliament. They are not the leaders that we are scared of. We need to really ask for accountability, and they really know that they are representing us in the Parliament.
Right.
And it's not about the who. It's about what are they bringing,
What are they bringing?
differently.
Perfect. Right. Lonzen, you have the last word. Real quick.
It is a bit long, but I don't know how to make it short. But the best way to make it short is that until our parliament is constituted in the way it is, where they don't represent constituencies, usually when nobody's responsible, nobody's responsible. So that is why it ends up when nobody's responsible.
So we need to make them responsible by going the constituency base?
Well, we need to do some reforms at some point. We need to do some reforms if we want to. The only reason it is working today is because we have a government that is clear about what it wants, and it has conviction, and the citizens are behind it. But once a government that's not constituted this way is in place, other things will collapse.
Right.
So, yeah.
Thank you so
Actually, I
much.
also think the size of parliament is small.
The size of parliament is small.
Yes.
You want a bloated parliament?
Not bloated, but reflective of the size of the
I think it should be reduced. It should be reduced.
No, they should
be
increase.
reduced to 60 and make it, looking at our population, median age 19, so make it youth. 2 per district and 1 youth and 1 woman.
And who will pay them?
No, they are 60, they've reduced, so they are less.
Okay, so,
yeah,
we
so the
reduce and
budget
you're
actually
saying
is
we
more
have to
available.
increase.
Yeah,
I think this is a debate for another day, and it actually creates fodder for more conversation on these particular issues. Thank you so much for being with us, Mama Josephine. Thank you for being with us, Gonzague and Juliet, and of course, Dr. Lonza. Thank you for making time for All in Focus. And of course, for you who've been tweeting, the conversation still continues. Hashtag InFocusRW. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the conversations that you've had right here. You've had right here. We'll see you again, same time, same place. As always, my name is Eugene Anangwe. Good night. Thank you.
Hello, my lovers of fashion. Let me first give you a very warm welcome to our show, InStyle. InStyle is the show that's going to talk about fashion.